once again join us on the dais. Inviting Dr. A.K. Garg, Director, Innovation and IPR Division, Head of the Department in ICD, Ministry of Electronics, Information and Technology. May I invite our eminent speakers, Professor Heinz, Goddar, Mr. Gerard Owens, Mr. Nikhil Malhotra. Mr. Owens is Patents and Standards Expert EPO. Mr. Nikhil Malhotra, Head Makers Lab Tech Mahindra. Mr. Paul V. Jensen is Director European Business and Technology Center EBTC. And Mr. Nakul Saxena, Policy Fellow, Spirit Foundation. May I invite Mr. Owens to kindly join us? May I request our eminent speakers and distinguished chairpersons to kindly take their seats on the panel. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome our distinguished panel for this concluding panel discussion session of this conference. The topic of this session is panel discussion on innovation and entrepreneurship and the role of IPR in software product industry. Time duration once again is 1 hour 30 minutes, which includes the opening and closing remarks by the chairperson, addresses and deliberations by our eminent speakers, and the house will be open for question and answers in the end. Before I hand over, a quick round of introduction. Mr. Grant Philpott, Chief Operating Officer, ICT European Patent Office, and our other chairperson, Dr. A.K. Garg, is Director, Innovation and IPR Division and Head of the Department, International Cooperation Divisions, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, has an experience of a technocrat and a veteran in intellectual property rights, IPR issues, currently serving as Director in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. Dr. Garg is handling a variety of responsibilities, including heading the International Cooperation Division, a critical arm of the ministry to promote international trade and cooperation and e-commerce initiatives. His educational background includes a B.Tech in Electrical Engineering from IIT Roorkee, M.Tech and PhD in Electrical Engineering from IIT Kanpur. He has till now published 20 research papers in international journals and holds 2 patents to his credit. Those words of introduction I hand over to our chairpersons, Dr. A.K. Garg and Mr. Grant Philpott. Over to you, sirs.
Good afternoon. Sorry we did not host a tea, and so I see that many of you have already left for tea. As we are India and EU are part of the 2 most strong democracies, and where the tradition is that the seeker, the implementer and the policy maker, these 3 in row actually provide the maximum noise pollution. So it becomes my duty to ask Grant to speak, because I, being the policy maker, will make the lowest noise. So Grant, it's with you.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether it really comes to me either as a policy implementer to say too much about this particular topic. Of course, it interests us though to know what role IPR has in the software product industry. In fact, it's the very heart of the matter as to why we're here today, and we would like to both in Ms. A.K. Garg's side and on our side to provide the best possible support and service to the software industry so that they can, as I referred to earlier on, have success, because their success is indeed our success. So I think without any more to do, we really ought to start by listening to our panel today, because we depend on their wisdom and their insights to get the discussion going. I would like to start off by asking Mr. Malhotra, the head of Makers Lab, to make his intervention. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you first of all, MeitY and DIPP for having invited us here. Just to give you a brief introduction of Makers Lab it's a small incubator space and R&D division within Tech Mahindra. We form part of the bigger conglomerate of Mahindras. The idea was started about 3 years back, where we wanted to have everybody tinker with new age technologies and stuff. So we do a lot of stuff with the big elephant in the room being AI and machine learning, and also IoT and a lot of other stuff, cool stuff that we do on robotics as well. Now, having said that, I know the role of IPR. I'm going to take it into two different perspectives when I give this answer. One, from what IPR or what IPR would really mean, or the advantages of IPR to some of the companies that we're looking at, but also the deliberating effects on certain things. Typically from a service industry view. I think in my repertoire or in my experience, I've also had a connection with a lot of startups and a lot of young SMEs that are actually building a lot of innovation. I think one of the things that IPR does for them, and I'm going to be very concrete about it, or maybe a short snippet, is there's a valley of death for innovation. We all know that. Innovation all starts off with an idea, and it actually builds up a little bit of a concept. Post that concept, if it's not being given a little bit of a rigor, it dies out. And that's something that we see with a lot of SMEs that today come up with their IPs and innovation if they don't IP it. Now, the moment they do put a protection right around it, there is a lot of change that we've seen with them. There are a lot of, kind of conglomerations that they can have. They can safely say out of the world that this has been proven right and this has not been correct or not. From a service industry point of view, we've taken about 4 different bets in the world. Number one, if you look at the service industry, or if you look at the entire software world, only 4 things are going to change in the world today. Your data is going to increase by 49% CAGR in the coming years. Somebody remarked that you're going to have 50 billion connected devices by 2020 or 2030. Number 3, AI is going to be the new UI of experience. Anything and everything would be driven by some format or the other from the AI perspective world. Number 4, that all the millennials that we see today are going to actually shop only on augmented reality or virtual reality worlds. These 4 things, I think the thing that's the most biggest or the difficult most part of it is the AI component. We still, and this is a personal experience, so we actually build a lot of these AI elements where my machine actually created another code. And when I went to the IPR cell, it says, I want to patent this technology. He says, no, but where's the code? So I said, there's no code. The machine just created it. He says, unless you can see the code, I can't tell you whether it's going to be an IPR or not. And I said, dude, that's what an AI would do, right? Previously, in statistical systems, you could probably see a result coming out, but now you're not with the deep learning techniques or maybe certain other techniques that we're doing. There's no resultant factor which is coming out of the system. So should I IP it? Should I not IP it is the bigger question that we do. So I'm going to leave my thoughts at that particular point, saying that when you think about technologies from a service world or a product world, there is going to be only few little technologies that are going to debilitate the effect of IP or patenting. And we've all talked about it all the day. This is going to be my figure of speech, a point where you say that if we can tackle rules around that, then we can tackle the bigger question of an IPR and the policies that we. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garg?
I think Nikhil has very rightly touched that the new product world or the product industry which is coming around the emerging technologies like IoT, AI, and which has also been deliberated throughout the day that these are very virgin technologies and the very virgin space and has challenged the whole world per se and not only computer software per se. So the point is that how do we handle this? How do we handle the challenge that this is posing right now, where not only these technologies do not have a method by which they can be protected, but also where most of the data that is coming, Nikhil, is coming from the public domain. And all this under the open data policies of the governments belongs to the public. Now, when you either use this data or when you actually try to structure this data and create value out of it, the tangibility that is associated with this and the benefits of IPR systems that needs to be passed on through this tangibility needs a different perspective which needs to be handled, and we actually as a community together should come out with some solutions that are for the future. In India, we are coming up with the new product policy very soon, and Nakul will be there. So, though we are seeing that how do we handle such issues, but 2 or 3 very glaring issues are there which needs to be addressed. First is that the next generation IT industry will be revolving around startups and young entrepreneurs. And though the patent systems or the IPR systems have been traditionally built for supporting individual inventors and small and SMEs and mitigate their risks, but let's understand in today's world, it is the large companies who are actually getting the maximum benefits out of it. How do we have to bring in the original essence of the IPR systems to support young SMEs, young entrepreneurs and individuals is what we need to deliberate upon. And this is a very important question. The second important question is that there is a linkage between data and technology. Many of us has discussed around per se and what is a software and pure software and all this, but let's understand the patent systems are made for technologies and supporting technologies. But when the data and the technology are entwined with each other, that the distinction becomes difficult, then how do we actually come up with a regime or an IPR regime which handles this is the next question that we need to deliberate upon. And I think our next speakers, Heinz, who is truly a global citizen, can address and give us an insight that how people are trying to do this or what should be the right method to do this. Heinz.
Thank you so much. I feel very flattered, and I have no answer. I have a lot of questions. Maybe a few suggestions how to answer certain questions. The first thing is, and I would like to immediately refer to what Dr. Garg said, what role do the data play in the determination of the first decision we have to make? Who is an inventor in the field of artificial intelligence? Is it the inventor who makes a machine which can make inventions? Is it the user of that machine which drives it in such a manner that it can make inventions? Is it the person who makes an invention, or is it the machine at the end who makes an invention? I'll come to that in a second. But what reminds me already today, when the importance of data was mentioned earlier, is I think particularly here in India this reminds me of the bioresources, for example, which are used in order to make a certain pharmaceutical invention. You go into the Amazonas river basin or wherever, or into the forests here, you find something, you use indigenous knowledge, you use natural resources of a people, of a tribe or whatsoever. They are in principle, since they enable to make the invention, if intelligently worked upon by other brains and minds and individuals and machines maybe, they are co-inventors. So I believe we need to treat data, but this is only a side remark, in the field of artificial intelligence in a similar manner as the international IP community since many years is trying to treat natural resources which you find. A solution has not been found. Some countries are fiercely against this. Some countries are in favor of their giving some of the benefit which is paid by society in some manner to the allowance to use this invention. We will see how this works. But data and resources are for me very, very similar, and we have to consider their role. Next step. I leave this, otherwise we would sit here still in 1 hour or so. Now we come to artificial intelligence in the narrower sense. I think there is no doubt that the number of inventors to be considered in the coming into existence of machines which can make inventions made by machines and whatsoever, the number of inventors will tremendously increase. That brings in a country like Germany and Austria, I think also Sweden, by the way, a new problem. Because we have this law, this unfortunate or fortunate law. I belong to the ones who thinks it is a fortunate law, namely that each individual inventor deserves a fair remuneration, a fair share of the commercial benefit which the user, the employer at the end of the day, and the successors-in-law of the employer get out of the use of that invention. So we must be very careful to define very precisely who is here considered as a co-inventor. So we will have legions of co-inventors, and I believe we come in the field of computer software, of telecommunication, we are nearly there already. We come to a situation which pharma, interesting enough, and chemical industry has known since a long, long time. Namely that we have many, many inventors. There will not be one inventor even on one patent. There will not be one patent used for a certain innovation. There will be 608 or something on one device, each of them 10 inventors. So, and then good luck to determine the fair remuneration of the inventor for all these individuals. Big problem. I think what would help, and this is the only thing I think which would help, would be if one would go somewhere where the collective societies for copyright have come since a long time already. Namely, for example, that the owners of standard essential patents would be asked not anymore to give a friend declaration, but to put their patents into some pool with a central administrator who then collects money from every user of the whole package under a fair, reasonable royalty for the whole patents which are used, because otherwise a newcomer would have big problems to come there, and then one would have to check, of course, what is the contribution of all these contributors, the newcomers and the old ones, which put their patents into that pool. And then we would come, I think, to a structure necessarily that you have a, whether compulsory, I don't believe in that, or a for voluntary kind of an arbitration mechanism, who would not only, however, have to determine whether somebody had brought more or less into that pool in terms of rights which can be used, but also we would possibly need something to do, which you find in the 29th of November opinion of the European Commission, how in future standard essential patents should be handled and friend conditions, but which you find also in the talks, and if I believe them, there will come very soon a guideline also of the Japanese Patent Office. Don't we need in patent offices, are they not the natural resource for this? An ability to determine upon request either by society or by inventors or by patent owners whether a certain patent is essential. And if we come to that we determine essentiality, not the 2,000 patents which are maybe per month declared essential for a certain phone standard, but which are really essential. We have a presiding judge in the appeal court at Düsseldorf for patent litigation matters in Germany who says that only 5% of all essential patents are really essential. And so this is a difference. So that has to be determined. Then you will see what's the value of these. There comes valuation. The value, relative value compared with the other contributors to that pooled standard are, and then you will collect money. Like when I buy a copier, I have to pay 38 euro if it is a Canon copier, and everybody who has ever made a product which can ever be produced or copied with that copier will get a fair amount of that money. I think we will come to such collective solution with the increasing number of inventors, the increasing number of applicants, and we need somehow to come to collective evaluation and also use mechanisms to give the rights, because ordinary courts can't do this. I have seen this